Well, welcome everyone to this panel session on innovative technologies. As I did before in my earlier session, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping notes for you guys and for the audience at home. So each panelist, after I introduce them, will have 8 to 10 minutes to complete their presentation. And then we will head to a question and answer session and maybe a little bit of discussion between yourselves as well. So if there's anything that you want to raise after all the presentations have been completed, please do so. And for our audience at home, this will be available on demand on the Smart Ports TV website. So without further ado, our first panelist hails from Canada. Daniel, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Beth. In line with the topic of this panel, I think when we think about future technologies, certainly artificial intelligence is one that comes to mind. So what I'd like to do today in the 10 minutes I have is to share some use cases of applied artificial intelligence solutions at the Port of Montreal. But I would also like to frame this in a broader concept of innovation ecosystem. So some of you may know that Montreal has great ambitions to become one of the world's leading AI hub, and so it's not a coincidence if the Port of Montreal also has some artificial intelligence solutions that we are developing and leveraging this ecosystem. Before I go into the ecosystem, let me just say a few words about the Port of Montreal very quickly. Second largest port in Canada. We're the fifth largest container port on the east coast of North America. Very diversified port, which was really a welcome thing during the pandemic. Speaking of which, before COVID hit, Port of Montreal had 6 consecutive record years of growth. That all came to a halt in 2020. We're expecting to go down 12% by the end of the year, which would take us back to 2016 traffic levels. Now, we also are unique in the sense that Montreal is a river port. It's located 1,600 kilometers inland, but we compete against ocean ports that are sometimes much larger than us. For example, the Port of New York has 5 times our volume, can accommodate ships 3 times the size of those in Montreal, and has 15 times our capex. So it becomes difficult to compete on volume and scale. So what do we compete on? We compete on innovation. So some of the smart solutions I'll present today are behind our vision to become North America's smart port. Next slide, please. So a couple of words before going into the use cases about the ecosystem. There are a few things that make Montreal unique in terms of artificial intelligence capabilities. Firstly, institutions. Not only do we have great world-class universities with a very high number of researchers, we also have an institution framework that allows development of entrepreneurship. So we have in Montreal some of the best accelerators and incubators of startups, whether AI or not. And the Port of Montreal has its innovation accelerator of its own. We partnered with Centec, one of the global leading accelerator to accelerate our innovation cycle. But also from the slide, you can see there's one institution that is quite unique in Montreal. It's called OMILEX, and it's striving to become the world's largest AI lab in the world. So it would house over 1,000 data scientists, and there are different synergies, of course, within the ecosystem that is created. But I think a second aspect to the ecosystem is important is the funding. We're very fortunate in Montreal to have what we call Scale AI. It's an innovation supercluster, a fund of 250 million Canadian dollars, fully dedicated only to AI applications and logistics, and to make Canada an AI-driven logistics chain. So this is really where the stars are aligned and where Montreal has great ambitions to become a global AI powerhouse. Next slide, please. So the first use case that I will discuss is this came into production less than a year ago. Since 2016, the Port of Montreal has an an open portal for trucking community to actually access in real time congestion levels at the port. So what you see on the left part of the slide is a visual with a picture of real-time truck queues at the gates of the 4 container terminals. The portal also provides truck drivers with real-time transaction times, so you know exactly how long your transaction will take. But we also provide, since late last year, predictive analytics on how long the transactions will be in the next 12 hours. So to the right part of the slide, a truck driver would go in and see 12 hours out what the congestion levels are likely to be at the Port of Montreal. So this solution obviously is based on machine learning to provide decision support for truck drivers. So dispatchers and truck drivers in using the tool can have a much better planning of resources in servicing the port. Next slide, please. Our second use case is very innovative. It was put together very fast and in response to the COVID crisis. So we turned to artificial intelligence, namely a technique called natural language processing, to actually fast track containers that contain critical medical cargo or protective personal equipment to accelerate the delivery to frontline workers who are actually risking their life to save people. So how the solution works is typically when a vessel arrives in Montreal 4 days before, the ship captain will send all the data about the contents of the vessel. And the algorithm will go at work immediately and then scan the thousands and thousands of lines of cargo that's on board the vessel in each container to look for keywords or even numerical codes of cargo that are associated to each cargo, to look for gloves, to look for surgical masks, disinfectant, etc., all critical cargo from a list that is official from the Canadian government, the Canadian Customs. So in other words, the algorithm is able to capture and identify the containers even before the ship arrives. Now, once the ship arrives, the container is offloaded, and we have a dashboard solution that will track and trace the containers to ensure that the containers stay on dock as less time as possible. We want to cut dwell times by 50% or 12 to 24 hours after vessel discharge. So moving on finally to the last use case. We're going into a technique called machine vision. Here, what we're doing is we're implementing a solution that will allow the port to better manage taxi and bus demand related to cruise vessel arrivals. So right now in Montreal, whenever there's a cruise vessel, we have a long lineups of taxis which are really hard to manage and create obviously congestion. So what we want is to have a more on-demand, just-in-time sort of vehicle management system. So we're turning to artificial intelligence to actually use video feeds to capture video from cameras. So you can see that on the left, the algorithm is able to detect human beings and count passengers that are moving inside or outside the cruise terminal. So we have a first level of analytics related to passenger counts. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, the algorithm can also, as you can see, detect vehicles as they are inbound into the passenger embarkation, disembarkation area. So this obviously allows to, you can see, to profile in real time how many taxis are coming in, how many buses are coming in, etc. So this solution obviously is tailored for reducing the environmental footprint and the carbon footprint of vehicle demand and access to the cruise terminal. So that's all for the use cases. I was able to show 3 different techniques: machine learning, there's natural language processing, and then machine vision combined with operations research. So 3 use cases, 3 different fields of application in the port, and 3 different AI techniques. So, and I was trying to attempt also to show that if the Port of Montreal is slowly taken a leadership stance in introducing AI in his business process, it's not a coincidence. It's also because we have a very rich AI ecosystem behind us. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for that. And it's really interesting to see how these technologies have been implemented, especially this year. As you mentioned, it's been put in place to help with the relief effort for the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you for bringing us those use cases. Next, we would like to head over to Jorge. Please begin your presentation. So we're just having a few issues at the moment, so we're going to move on. Piet, I hope you're ready with your presentation, so let's go ahead with that one.
Okay, thank you, Beth. It's a pleasure to be here with you. In the coming 10 minutes, I would like to share 3 things with you. First of all, it's about the exponential growth and the period of that we are currently in and will be for the coming 10 to 20 years. Secondly, I would like to stress also that it's important that technology and innovation should be part of your company strategy. So I would like to elaborate a little bit on that. But also I would like to show some concrete examples. What are we doing in the Port of Antwerp on, for instance, IoT, machine vision, smart shipping. Just as a short introduction, a few figures on the Port of Antwerp and the relation to technology. We are a port with 120 square kilometers of area, which is large, with more than 200 million tons of cargo going into it every year. So that's a quite huge complexity. And the good thing and the nice thing is that technology is becoming available today more and more and faster than ever to do that in a more efficient, better and safer way. So, and if you go to the next one, please. We should not forget that we are currently in a period of exponential growth of technology. And I think since the COVID crisis, most people understand what exponential growth means. But you can say since about 2007, we see a significant increase in and dropping in price. We should not forget that. A significant increase in capacity on processing power, storage, availability of sensors, new emerging technologies are coming up. One short example, the chip has been invented beginning of the 70s. Then you have 16 transistors. The latest Apple 12 iPhone, which was released a couple of weeks ago, contains 12 billion transistors. And that's only the beginning, because within a few years, quantum computing will become available. And then we talk about an increase of speed, not of 100, of 1,000 times, but 100 million to 1 billion times faster than the processing power which is available today. So we are still only at the beginning of a major transformation there. The second example I would like to share is the positioning of the top most valuable brands, world brands, not including China. But there you see back again that 2010 is a kind of turning point where companies which have been there forever, like GE, IBM, they were disappearing very fast in a few years' time. And new kids on the block like Google, Facebook, Amazon, they are coming from nowhere and are in the top 5 now. So you see in the top 5, all of them are technology companies with a market value which is bigger than Belgium or even than the stock market in Germany. Okay, so coming back to Antwerp, we defined a couple of years ago in our business plan 5 strategic priorities on mobility, sustainable growth, safety, security, operational excellence, energy transition, and digital transition. Okay, you say that's good. We have 15 programs behind that and several tens of projects. But what's the link now to technology and innovation? And next one, please. The slide I show here is probably 4 years old, so I don't like to show it, but it's just to show where are we coming from. Is that at that moment we mapped, and Daniel knows that, we mapped a wide range of potential technologies to our strategic priorities. So we have been making a selection of 10 major technology domains and defined how can they support the faster, better, cheaper realization of our strategic priorities. And there you see, I don't go in detail here, but you see the green blocks. And there you see a match. You see also some red blocks. There is also a match, but not in the time frame of 2020. For instance, 3D printing, fast evolving technology, but the impact today on the port business is very limited. That can change within 5 to 10 years, but not yet today. Okay. So how do we, next one please. Yeah. How do you translate that in our innovation strategy? I think we see 4 major drivers there. First of all, ensure on the left side, left below, be sure that your organization and that the people there also aware what is innovation, give them the room, time and budget to experiment, because everybody in its own working environment can try new things with emerging technologies. Look to existing technology and try to define what's the value of that into your port business. So every year we do 8 to 10, we call it not proof of concepts, but proof of values, where we use a certain technology ready to use and look, is that bringing value to our port environment and port business? And that's going from very wide. That's from plastic capturing over hydro-turbine systems to drones and smart shipping. One of our roles as Port Authority is building the community and also innovation. We accelerate there and we support initiatives accelerating innovation. Like Nextport is data sharing platform, Chainport, which is a heavy contributor also to this event. We have the Beacon and IoT ecosystem. And the last point I would like to make, and that's also represented here, we should not forget that the port is a very interesting environment for all of these emerging technologies. So we position the port also as an open innovation platform where technology companies can faster develop and mature their products. And to give you a few examples, we have been defining the use cases for drones. We defined more than 45 in Antwerp. We are currently implementing a digital twin. There is a session on that later this evening. Currently, we have defined 120 potential use cases. So it's only a few examples showing the huge potential which is there in ports. Okay, next one. Energy transition is of course crucial, and what we are currently doing there is building the first hydrogen tugboat, which will become operational mid of next year. So based on a diesel hydrogen motor. Okay. IoT is yes. IoT is of course a fast evolving, and it's important to build that network of sensors and cameras and smart to connect smart information and bring in these data streams to central system. We use that, for instance, next one. We use that, for instance, for our maritime infrastructure to monitor that. We have 7 locks in Antwerp. Each lock contains 4 lock doors, and that's large infrastructure, 1,500 tons for 80% underwater. So we have equipped them with 6 different types of sensors to understand better the behavior and come to more predictive maintenance of that infrastructure. On the right top, you see a small example where innovation is not always digital. So there you see bolt indicators on moving part of bridges. So from distance you can see if a bolt is not going loose, and same like you see that on wheels of cars and trucks. Okay. Next one, please. Also, safety is an important aspect in the port. A few examples here. We have equipped we have 250 live buoys in the port. We have equipped them with a sensor. So if somebody is taking out a live buoy, we get immediate notification that that is happening, so we can intervene there. Maybe somebody fell into the water. We have wearables from Rombit. We do testing on that on our tugboats, so that you get an alert when somebody is getting overboard. And recently we bought few remote controlled live buoys. So you can use that on the quay or on a boat. If somebody is falling in the water, you can send with a very easy to handle device, you can send a life buoy to that person to save him. Okay, next one. I think it has been mentioned already by Dan and also this morning. Machine vision is a very fast evolving technology. We have 600 cameras in the Port of Antwerp, so we use that infrastructure to extract intelligent data out of that. Next one, please. So 2 years ago, we were start working with that, and then we did several proof of value, proof of concept to see what that technology means. We decided beginning of last year that this is core technology for us. And what, next one please, what we for instance did was building a model for maritime infrastructure. So we use that today, machine vision for maintenance of our maritime infrastructure. Because by taking pictures of that and the system is identifying automatically, this is a fender, this is a ladder, this is a buoy, and also looking what is the quality of that. Okay, I give you maybe one small extra example. Okay, you see here underwater sonar system was the visibility in the water in Antwerp is 30 centimeters. So you see what by having new technology coming in, you can improve a lot your visibility underwater, because most of our infrastructure is of course underwater. Okay. Next one, please. Smart shipping. I think that's a nice story, because we were discussing before with the panel also. I think that for Antwerp, inland shipping is very important. 40% of the cargo is transported via barges. We see there that there's a sector becoming ready for disruption. Why? The current fleet is very old. It's older population. There are some issues on emissions with regulations who are becoming more severe. So you see that automation or remote controlled, next one please, can fill a gap there. And you see here some shots of the company Seafar, who actually had already today a commercial sailing of a remote controlled inland ship. I think they were probably the first in the world to do that. You see the picture there on the top. So they have a remote controlled center in Antwerp where they manage several ships, newly built ones, not having any facilities for a captain or for crew on board. And that's working very well because one captain remotely can steer several other boats. So I will keep it there. I think I have shown the last one indeed is about digital twin, but that is coming back later this evening at a session at 5:30. Thank you.
Very much. Yes, we definitely have a dedicated session on digital twin later on this afternoon. So much going on at the Port of Antwerp. I've got a few questions for you later on some of the things you mentioned, so I'll come back to you after we've had our next presentation from Awake.A. Karno, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. So, welcome to the future of sustainable and intelligent logistics. My name is Karno Tenouvo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Awake.A. My background is developing remotely controlled and autonomous ships, real-time optimization solutions, and asset management solutions when I was leading a Rolls-Royce business called Ship Intelligence. After developing these smart vessels, I realized that these cannot interact with ports and logistics systems if the necessary digital handshakes are not developed. And when most processes today are manual and not transparent, we need to digitalize them. And after that, we can optimize them and finally automate them. This is the journey Awake.A is leading. So we're here to automate port-to-port transport. In the picture, you see how we are developing the situational awareness and optimizing the maritime logistics. The lines in the picture are sea traffic models. We are fusing with port calls and cargo operation models. Then with multimodal land traffic models and port-specific predictive models. And we're all fusing all this together to create the full situational awareness. So next slide, please. So our innovations now, we're here to talk about innovations. Our innovations now are, number one, we are up to 80% improvements in event predictions compared to currently used forecasts. So all the data from different sources are fused to improve these prediction models that we can offer to the market. Number two is that actors in the maritime logistics go from traditional 24-hour visibility forward to what they can have now several days and weeks visibility forward, which enables them better planning of resources and services, right time and place. This is what our automated AI data pipeline is doing actually. Number three here is that we're bringing new type of communications to all logistic actors. So digital instant messaging tool per port call. This is shown as messaging, image sharing, and other related microservices that will take the transparency to the next level, really. Number four is that we have been talking about computer vision solutions here. We do have that similar capability, so we can track movements, identify and classify assets in real time using computer vision. And this is built into the platform we have. Number five is we are developing these APIs and machine learning models for smart and even autonomous ships to arrive and depart from ports in the future. So just one of the fun 5 things I wanted to highlight. So next slide, please. So then we talk about what is leading the future of innovations. I think it's led by emission reductions and enabling these smart and even autonomous operations. By optimizing the logistic chain and cargo flow, waste is reduced and capacity utilization is increased. This leads to 775 million metric tons of CO2 reduced by 2030. And that is the same amount than 164 million cars have, or 200 coal power plants produce in a year. The cost of producing this optimization service is minimal compared to the potential savings. So every metric ton of CO2 we reduce, 157 euros is saved. And when you multiply these two together, that gives you over 120 billion euros saved to reach the emission targets. On the right-hand side, you see a mission example of autonomous vessel approaching a port. We're here describing some of the functional interfaces and services and messaging between the systems. And Awake.A is now developing this mission control system that manages these interfaces, machine learning models, and new services that the smart ship and smart port systems need. So next slide, please. So we're working with an increasing amount of organization and authorities in standardizing the APIs and creating a new digital services for smart port and shipping sector. Today, the ecosystem has about 100 actors, you see here. Customers are bringing use cases, requirements, and naturally they want to be the end users of these new digital solutions. We are solving and developing these together with software companies, technology providers, and research partners. We are then linking these to other ecosystems. If there are good solutions in other ecosystems or industries, we want to bring that to the ports and shipping rather than reinvent it. Ecosystems like these enable new business opportunities, joint development, joint financing, joint research, and of course international markets. So we are looking continuously for R&D partners who are the technology leaders in their field, data and integration partners, and also, of course, go-to-market partners. So, naturally, customer partners are welcome to bring use cases and pilots. But the key thing is that we do this in an ecosystem and network effect. Next slide, please. So I would like to end the presentation talking about what to do next. So we have been co-creating the solution with customers and partners using agile working methods, like many else here. But we can now bring to the market Smart Port as a service and implement the first ship-to-port digital interfaces. This is a digitalization journey that has just started. The full platform and open APIs for all relevant logistic interactions and optimization capabilities will follow. At this point, we can serve the market with universal information exchange so that not everybody needs to develop those interfaces and predictions themselves, but to get it from us as a service. And going beyond that, we see more connected platforms and ecosystems to support the end-to-end logistic chain automation and related digital services. And during this decade, smarter and even autonomous ships will start making port calls. And we will enable the sustainable port calls. So thank you very much.
Thank you everyone so much for your presentations. I think we talked about so many different technologies and innovations. We've got a good amount of time for some discussion actually, so I'm going to ask all of you a few questions. Daniel, let's start with you. So you kind of talked about how the technologies that you've been using were implemented this year to help with the response to COVID-19, and a lot of people have been talking about how digitalization is being accelerated because of the events of this year. From your point of view, how far do you see this being true, and what do you think the next steps are for ports to implement all these new technologies? I think we might... Did you hear the question, Daniel?
I'm sorry. The question, please?
Yeah, you mentioned using the technologies you've been developing in response to the situation with COVID-19, and a lot of people have talked about innovation and technology being accelerated this year, the development of it being accelerated this year. How far do you think that's true, and what do you think is coming next for the use of these innovations?
It's absolutely true. Yes, definitely COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation for many businesses. Can you imagine this crisis occurring 10 years ago where technologies weren't at the level that they are today? So we had a taste of this when we put together the project for the COVID-19 fast track project. So I would love to tell the audience that it was all thought out, it was all calculated, but the project came about as a mixture of strategy and circumstances. So in the early days of the pandemic, we were looking at a port like Los Angeles that took a very strong leadership stance in establishing a position of a market broker between demand and supply of personal protective equipment. And so I think ports like Montreal felt morally compelled to act. And so we took it upon ourselves to do that. And then at the same time came about a request for proposals for projects that called on Montreal stakeholders to apply AI to solve the crisis. So in a matter of a few days, we put together the project. In 10 weeks, we were able to actually develop a solution that was workable. So fortunately enough, we were already partnered with our AI supplier, Ivado Labs in this case, which understood the ecosystem, the port ecosystem, and we were able to fast track this initiative and deploy a workable solution in 10 weeks. I mean, this is unprecedented in the Port of Montreal context.
getting it done so quickly. I know these things usually take a little longer to implement. So that's kind of great to hear and a great example. Piet, at the Port of Antwerp, you talked about so many different innovations, from drones to autonomous ships to predictive maintenance. Was anything accelerated because of the events of this year, or did anything new come about during 2020?
Yeah, it's clear that COVID is accelerating already digitalization and automation. We have, for instance, seen in specifically in the break bulk sector, which was hit quite hard by the crisis, that the companies which were digitized most were infected least. So that was a clear example where digitalization is creating value. To give you one example, I think maybe similar to Montreal, of how fast things can go, is that end of last year we started up a project on wearables and security and so safety, man overboard and things like that. But the company we were working with, they developed in a few weeks' time also an additional functionality to calculate the distance between two people. You know, we had some regulations and minimum distance which should be kept between people. In Belgium, it was 1.5 meters. So that was developed quite fast and also implemented. And there was a lot of exposure on a global level here in CNN and CNBC and so on to explain that. And also showing that ports, and I think that's a kind of big thing I saw in the last 6 months, ports remained operational for almost 100% in the last 6 months, which was very good to, of course, continue the supply chains to the stores and to the shops. But it shows that ports are less sensitive to this kind of crisis. Of course, there is a drop everywhere, and some ports it's more or less than at other ones. But in general, I think most of us have been doing very well, and also towards our societal responsibility. That played an important role. And by the way, maybe just to finalize that, it's Carlotto Perez, which is a South American professor working in the UK. There was just last weekend in our financial news an article interview with her. She predicts a golden age after COVID, because she says you need that kind of crisis moments to get a detraction between the capital from the established forms. So she says you will see in the coming years a lot of new investments in new technologies and new companies, and these will accelerate the development to a more digital, to a more green, and to a more global economy. So I'm very optimistic on that.
It's great to hear your optimism. Karno, kind of on the same lines, but obviously from a supplier's perspective, have you seen the demands or queries from end users or potential end users changing? Have you had more coming in because of the events of this year?
So naturally, we see that the bigger the player in the industry, the more they want to do investments in this type of technology in this time frame. So there's more projects, more governmental projects, more technology consortiums than ever before, and that's of course a positive sign.
Excellent. And so I've just had a question in from the audience, and I think this is one, Daniel and Piet, you've probably had many times before, and it focuses on when you use automation at a port and all these new technologies, is there a threat to the labour forces? And obviously what we've seen this year is things being done to reduce the amount of people. So kind of how do you see people and humans and innovation working together in the future? Perhaps Daniel, you could answer that one first.
Sure. I think these technologies are enablers, and they're first and foremost seen as allowing people to do better jobs more efficiently. So it's not a matter of technology versus humans. It's a matter of really leveraging the right technology in the right context. So, I mean, in our certainly in the use cases that I've described earlier, they're not about competing with labor or competing. They're just about making the process more efficient, improving especially the customer experience. And this is really what it's all about. These technologies are enablers to facilitate a better business process and make the client experience better.
Jorge, welcome back to the discussion. Hopefully you heard my last question, but if not, if there's any comments you'd like to make, and then the question was, how will innovation, digitalization, automation work with the labor forces of the future? Okay, perhaps Jorge did not hear me this time, so I'll move on to Piet. Your answer to that question, I'm sure you've been asked it many times before.
Indeed, I think, first of all, I like to work for a company which is innovative instead of a company which is not innovative. Because it's proven that a lot of companies disappear which are not investing in the future. I think secondly, you should see technology more and more as an assistant to the person and to the staff. And that's the whole concept we developed Awake.A, where we say technology as assistant, where you can do better, safer, also cheaper your job, and automation and repetitive tasks can be done by machines and by algorithms. So please invest in that and do that, because you will also create a lot of new jobs, and just by investing in that new development, and more than ever, ports should take a leading role in that. I don't see it happening so enough yet. I think the 7 ports here around the Smart Port Conference, all of them doing that, but there are many more ports who can join the ride there.
Brilliant, thank you. And another thing I wanted to ask all of you actually is so we're going to have a lot of ports and terminals and other people from the industry watching this today. So what would your advice be to them when they're considering implementing any of the new technologies that you have discussed today? So maybe we could start with Awake.A. Karno, what do you think the most important thing for them to consider is?
Well, even if you're a big player in the industry, the world is bigger and new technologies are developing fast. So when ports are making capex investments into fast changing technologies, they then tend to lock themselves for the following that path, to the death. And many times, ports are trying to make massive innovation leaps at one go. That ends up taking years while many factors change. So things to consider really, consider software as a service model instead of traditional capex IT projects. Making more smaller and faster proof of concepts rather than one massive program. And then focusing on fast smart port deployment, this fast time to market. So I'm talking about few weeks instead of many years. So that's
excellent. And Daniel, from your point of view, from the lessons that you've learned at the Port of Montreal, what you've been implementing, what do you think your colleagues in the industry should be considering?
Well, one message I would like to tell them is, think big but start small. Certainly in our experience, this formula has worked. We have been working in open innovation mode for the last 3 years. So we have, obviously we have dreams, we have great ambitions about technology, but I think one of the worst things to do is to fail in sequence. So it's okay to fail in innovation. Actually, it's actually a good thing to fail because you learn from your mistakes. But I think to innovate, you need to scale the solution properly with the problem. So start with proof of concepts, scale up. And I think in our case, at least, this is a solution and an approach that has been working.
Excellent, thank you for your answer. And we're going to give Jorge one more chance. Can you hear us, Jorge?
Yes.
Yes,
oh,
you
yes.
can hear us. So we're just going to pause the discussion that we're having at the moment, and Jorge's going to present to us his presentation now the technical issues have been solved. So thank you very much for your patience. Take it away, Jorge.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, hello, thank you. Thank you for the time. My name is Jorge Moreno. I'm the head of commercial of Hutchison Ports based in Barcelona. And I would like to thank the organization and Smart Ports Conference the opportunity for us to present our new application that connects Hutchison with the port community. Just for those that doesn't know who is Hutchison, Hutchison Ports is the world's leader in the container port business with presence in 52 ports, in 26 countries. Member of CK Hutchison, one of the largest listed companies in Hong Kong, and with 5 main lines of activities: ports, energy, retail, telecom, and infrastructure. In terms of ports, Hutchison is moving more than 10% of the total volume in the world, with more than 50 years working in this sector and with volumes of 85 million of 20 equivalent units, with more than 30,000 employees. Okay. BEST is the first experience of Hutchison in the Med, and the group landed in Barcelona in 2006 after being awarded with a concession in the port. Since then, the port has been constructing one of the most advanced terminals in Europe, a semi-automated terminal, manual in vessel operations, fully automated in the yard, which started operations since 2012. Since then, BEST has been breaking many different records in the group and has become one of the most productive terminals, not just in the group, but in the world, in terms of the efficiency and the number of movers per hour. Our name BEST has been always a challenge for us, and we have tried to really be at the avant-garde of any possible innovation as the one that we will present today. One of these innovations is the new app, and it's called UBI, later the origin of the name, and it has been developed internally by our group. The world every day more, as we have been seeing here, is becoming more digital, faster, greener, and closer. And all these objectives are treated and shared within the app. This app represents a new communication channel with all the customers and users and stakeholders of the terminal. With this new digital app, we try to become much more greener, with less paper. We try to reduce the service time and to be faster. We try to be closer to our peer community, giving all the information they need on time. Who are the target users for this app? This app is basically designed to provide usable information to the whole port community, tracking companies, shipping lines, agencies, shippers, freight forwarders, importers, and exporters. All of them should get benefit from its use. We have been inspired in different demands of the port community to improve their experience. We have been in contact with most of them in order to really provide what we were supposed to provide. And there will be as well general information that will be useful for everybody, as well as specific information that is addressed to specific collectives. Okay. In terms of shipping information, what we can show here is real time of the arrival pattern of vessels. Okay. We can see expected time of arrival and the departure times. Once we dive into a specific voyage, we can group all the specific information of the voyage. We can provide, and not limited to the expected time of arrival, its port status, the shipping agent, and different information. The information about the vessel itself is available, but one of the most advanced features here is that it's possible to activate the follow mode. of the vessel, which means that a user can be updated with the vessel status when any kind of changes is happening, when the vessel arrives, when the vessel is operating. So this is much active. When talking about container, we can provide information as well about the container number and container status. This information is quite useful for importers and exporters that want to know when the container have arrived and have left the port. There will be 4 stages of status of the container in the app. And we can tell when the container has been planted, when it's on board, when it's at the port, and when it's at the yard. Once again, we can activate a follow mode, and it can alert the owner of the container when this container is available for them to pick it up. We really believe that this functionality is really practical in order to have an efficient and connected logistic chains. The user can follow a set of containers as well, so they can choose a list of containers to be followed. The app, the most important application or functionality of the app is for the tracking companies. We have converted the app in a communication window for the terminal and the trackers. We know one tracker is registered in the app, we will link its information ID with his profile. In the Port of Barcelona, each service of a truck is controlled by a unique PIN number that identifies the job to be executed. This information traditionally was sent via EDI through different portals to the trackers. Now, all this information will be available at their pocket through the app. The app will remind the tracker, depending moves, where to go. It will be the communication channel. In case of any incident, we can communicate it to the tracker, and we can advise the tracker to proceed or to do whatever we need them to do. And finally, we can provide them the EIR, and we will send the final information to the app, saving paper and saving time to the tracker. So apart from all the information that we can provide to the vessel, the shipping companies, and to the cargo owners, we will provide as well all the needs, and we could cover all the needs the trackers needs to be in its interaction with the Port of Barcelona. UV provide finally general information to users, information like verified gross mass, different details, weather forecast, general information on the dates of the terminal and the Port of Barcelona, interesting leaks. At the end, this application that will be free for users and will be able to be downloaded very soon in the Apple Store and Google Play. It's basically a different way to interact between the terminal and the users of the terminal. UV, that comes from the Latin term ubique, will help us to become, as we commented at the very beginning, greener, faster, and closer to the users. And it's just the first step to be even more integrated in the digital world of this logistic sector. Basically, this application has been developed in other terminals in the group as well, with a very successful welcome by the users, and it has become a very useful tool for all the users in the project.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm glad we were able to connect you and you were able to give us some insight into the application and the new way of connecting the users and the terminals. But you've not got away with not answering some of my questions. So I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I asked our other panelists. Firstly, concerning COVID-19 and the acceleration of the adoption of digital technologies. What's your take on this?
Well, we have seen how COVID-19 is imposing much more working outside the offices, so remote connections. This is basically affecting the way we work every day. Logistic ways, every day is much more important to be connected to the different users, to different stakeholders, and we are making an effort in that sense. We are providing useful information in different ways in order to really be on time and to be ready for the needs, the customers' needs. So basically, the COVID-19 is changing the way we are organizing our work internally and externally with our partners. So far, it's a very open question mark what will happen in the future when this situation is solved. We believe that the digitalization that the situation is forcing is really welcome, and it's going to stay for a very long term. Okay? From the point of view of the logistics, as said, information is every day more important, and we are trying to make our offer to have all this information available in all different ways.
And the second question came from the audience, and as I said to our other panelists, it's one that comes up quite a lot, which is what the impact of implementing automation and semi-automation and other technologies has on the labour force. What do you say to people that have concerns about that?
Well, in our case, automation is working perfectly with the labour force. So in our case, we have a semi-automated terminal, and we are, let me say, exploring the best of both worlds. And they are combining the flexibility and the performance of manual operations at the vessel side with the structure, organization, and control of the fully automated yard. So I don't want to talk about, or I don't want to combine or to say that automation is against the labor force. Automation is basically providing a sustained response, a much more reliable way to work, but we can combine it perfectly with the people working at the terminals. So automation has to be seen as a tool to be used by terminal operators in our case in order to improve the service level. As commented before, BEST is the highest performance level in the group, with levels of performance per crane over 40 movements per hour. And this is basically because of the combination of the manual or the stevedores in the waterside operation and the preparation of the cargo in the yard. So we should think how to really work together and how automation can really work and can help to organize the work at the terminals.
Yeah, I certainly think it's agreed across the board that it's a hand-in-hand thing to implement automation and continue to work with the people on the ground. And another question for you then. You did mention that you've rolled out the project to other terminals under Hutchison during your presentation. So obviously you must have had some lessons learned from the first iteration of the project. What are some of the challenges that you were able to overcome, and maybe some advice you would give to others that are looking at implementation of these kind of technologies?
I think that one of the most interesting parts of this technology is the integration of our systems with others' systems. So this is just the first step, but our challenge is not just to provide information in the pocket and to provide information through an app, but as well to connect and to interact with other, like shipping lines, like trucking companies, agencies, to really interact and to connect our systems with their systems. This is the most important challenge, and this is, I believe, that what we should really try to really solve in the future. So it's quite useful in other terminals because it's providing information, and we are substituting and replacing paper by this app. It's quite useful just because we can communicate very easily with the users even when they are inside the terminal, and we can provide updates, and we can really send the information through the app. But as I said, the next challenge is basically to connect clearly our systems with their systems, as other already shippers are requesting from logistic suppliers.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll bring everyone else back into the discussion now. We've got the answer on the challenges and things to expect from Daniel and Jorge. Piet, what would you kind of give as your advice to those that are kind of looking at what the Port of Antwerp is doing and thinking, right, how can we start to even implement some of those kind of projects?
Yeah, the biggest advice I can give is do things, just do it. Because technology is evolving so fast that maybe something which was not working 6 months ago is working today. So continuous trigger yourself, trigger other people to move their borders in bringing in new things. And budget should not be an issue because technology is becoming so cheap. Okay, you have some still solutions on specific sensors which are more expensive, but in general, technology, and mainly if you compare it in the port business, where we are a very asset-intensive business with huge investments in hard infrastructure. If you compare that with the amounts which are necessary to invest in digital infrastructure, it's less than a few percent. So don't hesitate to do that, because it will move you a lot further and faster.
And Piet, one thing I wanted to ask you about is you mentioned the kind of exploration of drones, and I know you've presented on this before at the Smart Piers event. What is going on in terms of the use of drones, and how is that possible at a port where the airspace can be relatively hard to kind of get access to? So what's going on with the drones?
It's indeed, and the last year we have been working very hard to get everything resolved there. We are getting there. From January onwards, we get a new European legislation on drones, which gives much more possibilities in flying drones. So currently, since September, drones are flying around in Antwerp. We use them in the first place also for detection of oil spills. So we have about 100 oil spills in the port every year. So detecting them as soon as possible is good for the environment and for our operations.
Excellent. And are there any other use cases for drones, like for people that might not be familiar with what they can be used for? I know you can put different sensors on them and...
Yeah, indeed. I think we have been using them also for incidents when two ships are crashing in each other, when there is damage on infrastructure, when there is something happening in the port, like an explosion or a major incident, we send drones to it to get a better view of what is happening there. So other ones is on, like mentioned also before, on safety. If somebody is getting into the water, you can send drones over there with some basic life-saving material.
Excellent. And a question that I think I had sent all of you before this panel, so hopefully you've got some good answers for this one prepared, was what do you see as leading the future of innovation? So where do you see innovation going? I'm guessing the possibilities are relatively endless, but Daniel, what are your thoughts on this one?
Actually, that's a tough question. I see a lot of promising technologies. Obviously, I spoke about artificial intelligence. At least from our industry's point of view, artificial intelligence 3 years ago was a buzzword. And I agree with Piet. Things are changing so fast. In the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen leaps in terms of what AI can do. We are now seeing ports with applied AI. Things that we barely saw a few years back. So obviously AI has great potential, and I'm certainly not an AI expert, but what I'm seeing is that the different techniques are now being combined. So you have machine learning combined with operations research, which are exponentially giving more results, better results. And so combining the different AI techniques, to me, has a great potential in the future. I'll leave it at that.
And Jorge, the same question to you. What do you see as leading the future of innovation from your point of view?
Think about innovation. The first thing that comes to our minds is technology, is to become more digital, is Ports 4.0. But I believe that one of the most important trends in terms of innovation for the future will be to become much more greener and sustainable. I think that we have to really not just link innovation in the future with digitalization or with IT. And we have to think as well how to become cleaner and greener. So this is, I believe, a new trend for the port business. We have seen how we are electrifying the berth lines, how we are every day eliminating the CO3 in the ports. And this is, I believe, at least in our case, one of the main efforts. We are focused in becoming not just much more digital, but as well much more greener. Okay? It's an important issue for us.
And Pete, I'm sure it's hard to pinpoint one thing of everything you've talked about, but just briefly, what do you think on that point?
I think, first of all, innovation is also not more than a means to do things, create new value. And I think George mentioned it's crucial that also on climate transition, energy transition, we bring in much more innovation, because it will be crucial as a port business to make the transition as soon as possible within the shipping, within the industry, but also creating new value. And that potential is there. I think we only have to take it.
Excellent. And finally, Karno, just quickly before we finish up.
Okay, naturally, I want to say AI is leading the future of innovation as an AI company. But besides the emission reductions and smart and autonomous ships I was talking about previously, I just want to highlight a few things. So it's not just the technology; it's the business model. So as a service business model is something that we should see leading this. As I don't see a world where every actor can afford to develop the same solution in their own silos. That's not working. So how many times in the world we need to invent the same things? This also applies for standard creation. So the industry we're now working has really only few standards. We need to create that in collaboration with, even between competitive parties. And the collaboration seems many times much harder than actually the technology development itself. So let's focus on those.
Well, excellent. Thank you to all four of you for joining me and the event here today, and thank you for your presentations. For the audience at home, if you missed any of that, want to get a catch up on what the presenters said, you can head to the Smart Ports TV website and access everything on demand. But thank you ever so much, everyone.